Girl, you the bend, and she love me when I'm in it, and she never be pretending. Nothing is real. She gon' tell you what she bought it, cause she know you can't afford it. Know you can get it, looking exquisite, no competition. Stay on the pivot. Who be watching, they be plotting. She's so motherfucking independent. Mama be big, got on her grind. She had to get out her.
Hello, welcome. This is the E Spot with Camille. I am your host, Camille Cower, and I am so excited for you to meet my guest today. He is the one, the only Chris Goddard, who you recently saw on Design Stars as one of the top finalists. So we're very excited to have a winner here, which it was a winner way before Design Stars. That was only on a national, no, not even the only one on a national level, because you've won tons of awards on a national level.
Awards, yeah.
Yeah. So, Chris, tell everyone how you got your start in design world, becoming a design star.
Fun journey. I actually live in Northwest Arkansas, but I work all over the globe, which it's fun to travel because people are always like, wait, you're from Arkansas and you're here, you're there. This year I'm up for International Interior Designer of the Year, which is kind of a big deal. So I'm going
Congratulations
for that, which is exciting. And I was just named one of the top 100 designers in the world. So that was amazing. So being from Arkansas, it always throws people for a loop. But I started design probably as a kid. I've always been super passionate about my surroundings and my interiors. And as a kid, I grew up in a very modern house, and everything was built in. So all I could really move around were like posters and art and accessories. So I was constantly moving things around, making my mom nuts when she'd come home. So she knew she had a creative kid on her hands. So when I went to school, interior design was in the home ec department, which was the 80s. I know I don't look as old as I am. But so in the 80s.
I'll never age you, and definitely want to age myself.
No. So I went to school and I got a business degree as well as a creative design degree, because most creatives can't manage their finances because all my creative friends didn't know how to take care of money or run a business.
So a lot of times it's one of those things you're kind of pigeonholed into one or the other. Like you can't be one or the other. And those scars, that's something I was just talking to another guest. Like sometimes those scars stay with you, so you think you can't do both. And so I love that you do both, or that you at least went to school for both.
Well, I grew up in a really creative family and had an uncle who was a very famous florist. And he was like, if you do anything, get a business degree, because all my friends don't know how to manage money. And that's the downfall of all creatives, because we get caught up in this world of beauty and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's a business like anything. And it's kind of hard to remember because you're dealing with people's money, their homes, their everything. So you've got to, and you're managing a staff, a team. I mean, I have 6 designers on my team and workrooms, and, you've got this whole world you're running, and that involves money and business. And this is my 35th year doing interiors, which is a long time. And I count part of that in being a business person and knowing how to manage money, projects, time. And God knows I've screwed up probably more than I've been successful. But I always say at the end of the world, it'll be me and sharing cockroaches, because I keep reinventing myself. So I'm like,
I'm glad Cher will still be there, but the cockroaches?
Well, I think what stands the test of time and never goes away.
Yeah, so that's true. Yeah.
Survive. And I think being successful is about survival and knowing when to pivot and change and evolve. And, my big mantra is, if you're doing today what you were doing 3 years ago, you're doing something wrong. So at any field, as you know, you have to constantly change yourself, the way you think, the way you do business, the way you look at the world. So I'm big on change and growth, and which is how I ended up on television. But that was my short story on my long 35-year career in interior design. But no, it's been an amazing journey.
I have a million questions for you. So let's start with growing up in Arkansas, because even I was like, wait, he's out of Springdale, Arkansas? How in the world did you get on an international stage from Arkansas? Like, so many people feel limited by their location or don't think to grow outside of their hometown or wherever they may be. So give some tips on how to get out and still be able to stay in your own hometown in that sense.
The fun thing about this is when you're young, I look back and we'll get to when I was on TV, but you're not afraid of anything. So you have no fear, which is the best part of being young. You probably did that early in your career. You weren't afraid of anything. And when I was young in my 20s, I had no fear. And I was fortunate that right when I graduated, I got an amazing job with a very important client, and they hired me to a 9-year contract. So I only worked for one family for 9 years, and I did their homes, planes, boats, corporate headquarters. I traveled the world with this family in my 20s, doing all of their major corporate and private residences all over the world. So it kind of gave me a foot in really early. And my first project when I was 20 that got me this gig, I did their home. And this was back in the day when we would send transparencies to magazines, which were slides. It was before the internet, before, a digital camera. So we did everything old school. So I did a box of slides, sent them to Architectural Digest at 21. Again, no fear. Because I thought,
I love it.
I was like, my work's good enough. We'll see. They got them, and I got a call. And my first project at 21 was to be featured in Architectural Digest. I was the youngest person to this date ever to have my work published. And from then it went on to I've been in every national and international magazine in the world. And a lot of that was from my youth of just not being afraid to, knock on doors. I mean, nobody's going to listen to you unless you put yourself out there. And I think for most of us, the hardest part is putting ourselves out there. And that's been the biggest journey for me. Is when I was young, I was, you show up. I mean, I'd show up to a phone book opening. I mean, you just have to go to everything and put yourself out there and not be afraid to introduce yourself, get involved. So my career kind of really took off. And I got, after 9 years, as happens in all big families, there's divorce, death, etc. So I still work for that family, but my contract was up. So I started working for other big families and traveling the world through those connections, and built a pretty successful large firm that's been able to maintain for, like, this is going on my 35th year, which is mind-boggling to me that I've been able to do this so long. But most of my work, because of who I work for, it's called NDAs, where nobody sees it because they want to keep it private, which my ego part of me is like Tinkerbell, if you're not applauding, I'm going to die. So as a creative,
It is, yeah.
it's a little hard because there's an ego part of us that wants the world to see what we're working on. But there's also the business mind that's like, hey, I've got a good gig. We're not going to rock the boat. So, so recently, a lot of my work, other than in some major magazines and awards and things, hasn't been out there. So my key is at 50 something right now. I'm putting myself out there again because I'm, that part of me that wanted the recognition and all that is finally like, okay, it's my time. So let's do this.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I had like the flip of that, of what you were saying, youth not having fear. I wouldn't say so much that I didn't have fear, but I felt because of my profession, I had to stay a certain way because I was a model and actress. I couldn't rock the boat. I couldn't tell my political affiliation or anything because you didn't want to miss out on jobs. And now, because I work for myself, well, because of the pandemic, I was working for myself and just felt like I was talking to so many friends that we would just go there that it just felt, well, forget it. I'll just say whatever I want from here on out. And if you love me, you love me. If you don't, you don't. And like you said, I'll go to the opening of anything just because you meet so many great people that you never know what opportunities can come from that. And I love that you were talking about how you've had this 35-year career and you just keep reinventing yourself and pivoting. And I'm wondering what have been some of the things that you've done during the pandemic, or even, I guess, after the pandemic, that you're going to keep, that some of those pivots, you're like, ooh, I'm going to keep this one.
My whole philosophy growing up and during my career, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. And, if you're not, like we're talking about, putting yourself out.
Write that one down.
Right. That's key.
The Tinkerbell one and that one.
Living on the edge, you're taking up too much space.
Yeah.
But it's really true if you don't constantly push yourself outside of your comfort zone. I always hear people, oh, I'd love to win the lottery. And I'm like, well, you hadn't bought a ticket. It's kind of that whole deal is if you don't try it, you don't know. And I've tried a zillion different things. I've had projects that have been wonderful. I've had ones that have not been so wonderful. I mean, that's how you learn. I always say rock bottom. I've hit it so many times. I've started putting dashes instead of my name, how you sign it. So, you learn and you grow from your mistakes and you become better. And I think my personal trait is that I take all the things that I've done wrong and done right and kind of process those into, hey, let's not make old mistakes, let's make new mistakes. Let's, and the pandemic was, we get back to that question, is that during the pandemic we learned that a lot of the things we were doing weren't necessary, and it kind of helped us trim the fat and learn what was important, what wasn't, who was important in our lives, what was working, what wasn't working. And it kind of made us all take a step back and take a breath, because much like you, we go 24/7 and we lose sight of why we chose to do what we do. And gave me pause, and my team started working from home, and it was just me and the office manager in the office. And I really began to think, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of it? Success, it's different for everybody. And what we thought was important to us 4 or 5 years ago, we learned isn't. I think we all go through in our youth, oh, we need this and this to be cool. We've got to have this car, this hat, all that stuff doesn't really matter. I've learned to put aside, though I do sell materialism, and don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted. I want everybody to have nice stuff, but my whole brand is built on what you buy, and how you live needs to have meaning and tell the story of your life. And it's all about the narrative of your story, not my story. And I think part of my success is that I don't do the same thing twice. I don't use the same piece of fabric twice, the same piece of furniture twice. There's no repetition. Because I don't want you to have what your best friend has or somebody else has, because it's about you, the client, not about me or your friend. And it's the hardest thing for people not to be sheep. We tend to want to follow trends, and I preach anti-trend, because why do you want what everybody else has? The biggest compliment I get as a designer is when somebody comes in, they're like, this looks just like you, Camille. It should look never like I was there, because you want your friends to come in, and your home is a reflection of you. And my job is to kind of guide you down that path to find the real you and how you want to live. And during the pandemic, people were spending more time at home, and it wasn't just a place to crash. So they were realizing how important their surroundings were, and the effect that your color, comfort, how it affects your mood. I mean, if you think about it, when you travel, your best memories are of beautiful places, and the places involve layers of texture, the environment, the mood, the colors, the people you were with. So I think the pandemic taught all of us that our homes needed to be our favorite places instead of where we would go. So the design business boomed during that time, but it also made me, as a business person and as just a human, kind of reflect on, how can I make people's homes even more comfortable, more luxurious, and make that kind of accessible. If you notice, I'll keep talking, so you just have to tell me.
No, you're great. I mean, the more information you give me, the better for me and for the audience. That's it.
I could talk forever about this stuff, so I tend to ramble, so reel me in whenever.
No worries. I'll try my best, but at the same time, I love hearing people talk. That's why I do. So it'll be hard for me to stop you, especially if it's a great story. So, like, when you were talking about your team, I wonder how you go about hiring people, because it sounds like you have such a great thing going. Like, how are you able to start feeling like you could loosen those reins some? Because I think that's the hardest part sometimes of being a creative, or even working as an interior designer, is making sure your vision is still your vision, even if you have other people doing other parts, or
I'm a major, like most creatives and most people, a control freak. And so learning to let go is the hardest part for me. But
that's why I asked. I'm raised by an artist, so
hard. But you learn to realize that you can't do it all by yourself. And when I was younger, in my 20s, I tried to do it all by myself. And again, learning lesson, things fall through the cracks. So I had a really wonderful client who told me, always surround yourself with the smartest and the best that you can afford at that time, and find people that fill in your weaknesses. And it's kind of hard to look at ourselves and realize, oh, well, I really suck at this. I'm good at this. I mean, I'm the key. I suck at relationships. I was married to a woman 10 years, a man 10 years. I know I suck at relationships. I'm great at design.
You tried both. You definitely gave both a try in that sense.
I always tell people, hey, if you want relationship advice, not me. If you want a beautiful room, I'm your guy. So find your lane. I mean, Kevin Hart does this wonderful thing about staying in your lane. And it took me until I was in my 40s to realize what my lane was, and also to realize where my holes and my weaknesses were. So I started finding the best those people to help me out with that. And then it's building trust. And I don't ask anybody to do anything I won't do myself. I still drive U-Hauls. I unload trucks. I work in our warehouses. Because once you lose sight of all the small parts and not pitch in, then you lose sight of your business. So I always tell young entrepreneurs and young designers that always be the one that's helping unpack boxes, loading, unload. It's all part of the package. It's just not fancy dinners and picking out colors. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And I still have my hand in every little bit, just because I remember Oprah saying that she always signed all of her checks. And that kind of stuck with me, because she knew where all the money was going, because she didn't want to lose sight of her finances and let someone else have control. But somebody wrote the checks, but she still signed all of them so that she could see where every dollar was going. And that was, I don't know, 20 something years ago, I heard her say that. So I'm kind of the same way.
I wonder if she still does that, because she's huge. Like, she's got a huge company. I'm like starting to think, like, all the actors she has to sign checks for.
That was her key of keeping up with, but so she let everybody else have the control of managing the finances. But at the end of the day, she still was part of it. So that was kind of, I listened to what other people say a lot, because that's how you learn. You have to always be open. And my deal is that, hey, I'm going to let everybody else do everything, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to check it, because my name is on the door. It's my, I've built the business. And as we know, nobody's forever. And so people come and go, relationships come and go, clients come and go, and you have to constantly be able to pivot. So if you lose touch of one little aspect of your business and somebody leaves, then you've got to be able to train somebody else. So I have learned to really let go, but I still stay involved. I don't want to be in some ivory tower where the people that work with me can't come ask me questions. I mean, I think, that's probably just the way I was raised, is that, before this, I was actually out in our warehouse unpacking boxes, making sure an order was right, which is why I look super glamorous right now. But
I mean, you're made for TV. What is the saying? If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So I would never know the difference. So it all looks, you look great. Oh, your hair is amazing. So you're lucky you have naturally curly hair, I guess, or wavy.
That's really big. Kind of like a football helmet now, like Steel Magnolias, but I'm in. So.
You've literally quoting all my favorite things: Steel Magnolias, Tinkerbell, and Oprah. Keep going. Oh, and a little Kevin Hart there too, because I'm like, oh, Jumanji.
Well, I just always like to listen, and that's as you know, it's the key to success. When people tell you something didn't work for them, I always think, oh, I'd like to take that in. I could talk to a fence post, because I always like to know what's going on, how people were successful, how they aren't. And in the creative world, I found that so many people don't like to share information, and I'm an oversharer, because people are afraid, oh my God, they're going to steal my thunder, take my clients or my business. And, I'm always asking, and a lot of people don't want to share, and I'm an oversharer. And
I'm right there with you.
Because
I'm an oversharer.
If I can't help other people, I'm not helping myself. And coming up as a young designer and a young professional, I remember to this day, I still see people that weren't helpful, and they're not as successful because they didn't share information or share knowledge. And that's just how we become better people.
Well, I was in an interview earlier today, and that was my main thing about why I love working with design and designers, is because they are, a lot of the designers I've met anyway, they're very collaborative and they work together. And if they can't do it, they can suggest someone that can, or it's just free flowing of information, but also they really genuinely want to help each other to do their best, whatever it may be. Because one thing I learned from working in the spa industry, even, in order to make your profession professional, for people to respect it, I was an esthetician and a spa director, you all have to be at the same level. So if there's someone else working with you who's not as good as you, it's your job to get them there. Or tell them they might need to try something else. Maybe they're a front desk person or a masseuse or a nail tech, like find a different profession that works best for you. But it's important to have that nurturing relationship at work, because it's only going to make it better. Like, as long as we're all working together and just really doing the best for clients, the customer, they're going to keep they're going to keep telling people, oh, you got to get a designer. Oh, it doesn't matter whether they're saying you got to get Chris or you got to get this person or that person. It brings the entire industry up when it's a consistent thing.
At the end of the day, there's enough work for everybody, and everybody's not the same fit for everybody. I mean, as an actor, you know that there's not every person can do the same role. There's enough roles for everybody. Everybody has their niche or their spot. And it's just like I always talk about finding your lane. And, you're going back to the way we work together. And, my team is my family. I spend more time with them than I did in any relationship at work. You're with those people the majority of your day. And my number one rule in my office is we have to laugh every day, because at the end of the day, we're making things pretty. We're not curing some major, we're not doing anything other than making a space beautiful. So my number one rule is, hey, we have to laugh about this, because it's easy to get so in your head. We call it going down the rabbit hole with stress and deadlines. And, we run 30 to 60 projects a year. So we're big, and which is a lot of stress and pressure and a lot of high maintenance people. So I'm always like, we've got to break this up during the day. So I always try and make it fun. So every day at work, there's always laughter and joy, because what we're doing is we're making beauty. We're not, and at the end of the day, that's supposed to be joyful. And we want it to be progressive to our clients, because if we love what we do, then they're going to feel that. It's kind of like that whole thing, never let them see you sweat. Something can be horribly going wrong, but to my client, I'll be like, oh, everything's going to be fine. You always have to, because once you show fear or scared or insecurity, people feed off of that. So if you're always calm and always treat everybody with respect and don't get upset, then it maintains that level. And it's funny to watch and see, because when I was young, I used to overreact a lot, be a little too dramatic, probably. Maybe occasionally still am. But, once people feed off that energy, and I'm a big energy person. So when I go to meetings or with my team, I'm always like, hey, let's approach this from positivity and, what we can do and what we can't, instead of what we can't do. I'm like a fixer in that way. So you just have to stay positive, and people feed off that energy. They really do.
And I'm glad you brought up the importance of even having that relationship with the client, because just as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them in the sense to make sure it is a good fit, and that, you're not dealing with a client that might have a problem for every solution that you may give to them. Like, that's a headache you don't need at the same time.
When you start a project, most of them are a year, 2 years, 10 years, and that's longer than most relationships. God, we've all had that. Most of them don't last a year, 6 months. I mean, so you're signing up for a relationship. So our first consults, I don't charge for. It's more like a first date. I go meet with them, they meet with me, and we make sure, because it's a lot of time together, that we can work together. And, and I'll be like, you know what, I would love to do this, but so-and-so would be better fit for this. Or, yes, I'm all about this. I think we'd make a great couple. Let's do this for a year or two. Because it is a very long process. It doesn't just end. And you're in people's personal lives. I mean, you're intimately involved with them. I make this joke because I'm going to write a book one day, because I've moved so many beds. I know way too much about too many people.
You know where the bodies are buried.
You hear all the drama. You're in their homes. You're in their person. You're all up in their business, basically. So, and you become therapist, designer, and it's vice versa. So going into these, you have to be really conscious, because it is a relationship. I mean, you do have to go on a few first dates to see if it's going to work. I used to never say no to anything. That's part of the no fear. And then that was one of my learning lessons, that sometimes it's okay to say no and pump the brakes and go, hey, this isn't going to work, because I tend to want everybody to be happy. I always say, if I was a drag queen, my name would be Coco Dependent. So
I might steal that one too, because my best friend's a drag queen, and why not steal that one? We're Coco Dependent.
Yeah, it's like the best dad name ever. It's also the kiss of death, because I always want all my clients and the people that I work with to be happy. So the older I get, the more
I can use that against you, huh?
Yeah, some people do. I'm a pleaser. Yeah. So that's again learning to say no, learning to have boundaries, and all that. There's a lot of bad things that come with age, but one of the good things is the power of no, and knowing what you're good at and what you're not, and being able to
knowing your worth
and know your worth. And again, I think the pandemic kind of helped us all do that too, and define what made us happy and what brings us joy and what didn't, and who did and who didn't. So that's just part of it.
So I want to ask about, so you got started, you were working with this family for 7-9 years, then another family 7. When you're working with someone so long, how do you adapt to their life? I mean, I'm sure, like you were saying, divorces, things happen that would make them want to change, but how do you start saying, oh, this wallpaper's starting to get dated, let's change this out? Or like, how do you even bring up maybe that your perfect design is time for a redo?
Well, the big reason people, my whole mantra is called timeless elegance. So I teach people that what you do is you buy quality and you take your time, because design is a journey. Beautiful rooms don't happen overnight. So working on with these clients over long periods of time, I'm big on, let's buy one right thing that you love instead of 10 things just to fill a space. So a lot of these projects, because they were larger, took a lot of time, and they're investing in beautiful things. And we start layering them over time. And if you invest in quality, it's going to last forever. So I get, yes, my favorite thing are dogs and kids, because they throw up and ruin things really fast and need them to be recovered. But good design is about creating things that withstand the test of time. And again, that's that anti-trend thing I talk about a lot. Is that you take your time, you invest in quality, and you buy things that you love. And, it's quality over quantity is what I always push. And a lot of my clients love that. I have clients that I did 20 years ago, and they'll be like, I know we need to redo. Why don't you come over and maybe we freshen up some pillows or whatever, but I still love it because it looks like me. And, it's really kind of a kiss of death for business end, but professionally, it means the world to me that they still love what we did, and it's withstood the test of time. Now, there are some rooms I look back and I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? Maybe I was desperate for money that week. I don't know, or something.
Or it was an NDA, so you don't have to admit to it.
Just tell them I wasn't here. It's being honest with your client. You can. But then people get tired of things. But if you help pick it out and you're part of the process, you're going to love it a long time. I'm sure you have things in your home you've had forever that you just look at and they bring joy or they make you happy. And that's what good design and beautiful spaces are supposed to do. And there's nothing worse than going in a room and you can't tell who lives there or where they've been or the story of their life. They might be pretty, but they might just be beige. So the deal is that you want to go somewhere that tells the story of the person that lives there. Like that beautiful painting behind you. I keep on going, what's she got going on behind her? I'm loving that.
Oh, thank you. So I was raised by an artist, and Olivia Gatewood, that's her artwork. So I totally stole it from her house. It's true story.
I love the color, and it matches your whole outfit. I'm like, she pulled together a whole look for this.
You can never go wrong with blue, ocean blue. Even you have blue on.
And the pink back there. I'm like, the whole thing is working.
I've had some help.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, you look good.
I had a designer help me with this as well. So,
No, it looks great.
You can't be, like they said, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. So I had someone that was better at design than me that helped me come up with my whole office setup. So
you knew your lane, you stayed in it, you let somebody that was in that lane handle it, and they did a good job.
They did a great job. So see, flattery does it every time. Makes me lose my train of thought. No, I'm kidding. No, but I want to talk about your Design Stars experience as well, to transition.
Oh my gosh.
Really quickly to being set decorator to being on TV. I guess I kind of pivoted in.
Yeah. Good transition right there. So was the first part of the pandemic, and we kept getting this phone call, and I thought it was one of my friends or clients playing a joke on me, saying, you want to come be on an HGTV show? And my office manager kept, we were like, no, that's a joke. And after the fifth call, she finally Googled them, and she was like, oh my God, this is real. You need to call them back. And I was like, okay, sure. So I called, and it was the producer from HGTV. They were like, we would love for you to join the cast of an upcoming show. And I was like, well, it's the pandemic. Can't do much. Going and living in LA for 5 weeks. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, it sounds amazing.
They can't. They said, we can't tell you what the name of the show is. We can't tell you what the show is until you know this, until you sign on the dotted line. And then you can't tell anybody for, I don't know, it's almost 8 months that I had to sit on the secret.
Wow.
And once I signed up, we got postponed a few times, and then we went out to Palos Verdes to film. And which was so funny is I had to vanish for 5 weeks, and all I could tell people is I was going to California. And I'm sure my clients, I was joking when I got back, did y'all think I was in rehab? Because honestly, I was like, who goes to California for 5 weeks and can't tell anybody why? I'm like, I think I'm at Passages. So
wait, what is it back? Here I go aging myself. It was, everybody would always talk about the Betty Ford Clinic.
Yes.
I even had like a shirt that said escape from Betty Ford Clinic, because I had no idea what it meant.
Right.
And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I was such a jerk.
No one better.
But needless to say.
But we so I got there and they told me the show, and it was so funny because the day we go, we were in quarantine in the hotel and they call you and they're like, okay, you have to be in the car in an hour. Once you get in the car, this becomes real. And I'm sure you've had this with your first job of being on camera and everything. It's a little horrifying. And I didn't know what I'd signed up for. So I was like, okay, you only live once. Where's the script that never says no? I get in the car and they take us up the mountain and I get out and, here is an entire team of like 4 cameramen, a drone, a producer, 3 sound people, all on top of me when I get out of the car. And I hit that fight or flight moment in our life. And because, I've had no training with television, I'm just a designer doing my thing. And, you've probably done this when the camera and the lights come on, you just got to make it happen. And something kicked in me and I was like, okay, let's do this. And we met the judges and we went through our first challenge and I ended up winning the first challenge, which blew my mind, which was amazing and scary at the same time, because all the reason that I started design I had to do, which was paint, build, fix, reupholster, all the things I taught myself as a young designer that I had kind of tucked away because I don't do a lot that I know how to do it, but I hadn't done it in 20 years. All of that instantly came back to me, which I was amazed. I was like, because they were like,
muscle memory.
They were like, here's a box, here's the wood, here's the paint, go forth and create. And I had that moment of like, what have I done? This is the end of my career. I'm going to look like an idiot on international television. And then I got in my groove and I pulled it off. How? It was a blur, because it's compressed into 2 days. So you have to.
And adrenaline too kicks in.
I lived on adrenaline for 5 weeks. It was, and getting used to, and I always thought it was a joke that, oh, you get used to the cameras. Oh, you get used to all of that. I was like, no, you don't. Well, you do, which is crazy to me. Because after the first day, I was so in the zone of working and just being my authentic self that I just didn't even know they were there. You become oblivious to that whole situation. I see how people get in trouble on reality TV real easy because you forget. I would be a great housewife because I have no filter.
So Housewives of Arkansas, if it ever happens.
But it was, the adrenaline kicked and I won the first challenge, which was amazing. And then we had 6 more and I won several of those and made it to the finale, which was so much fun and so surreal. And just getting to spend 5 weeks in this design bubble with 200 plus set crew, castmates. We all became best friends because we were tested daily for Corona. We were all insulated from the rest of the world. It was, all of October and 2 weeks of November of last year that we filmed in this like perfect little bubble of safety. And, we didn't have our phones. We didn't know what was really going on in the world because from sun up till, midnight, we were working, designing, doing interviews. The hardest thing for me is part of the challenges were social media challenges. And being a wee bit older, I'm not so savvy on, I didn't even know what TikTok was. And we had to make TikToks and Instagram lives and all these things. And I was 25 years older than anybody else on the whole cast, which was very interesting because I had been designing longer than most of these and people had been alive, which they gave me a hard time about, which made it fun. But the technology part was kind of my downfall, and which is why in the finale I had to do this big TikTok thing and I couldn't get the sound to work. And, so technology got me in the end. But I did learn
at some point. In October, Mercury might have been in retrograde. So who knows?
Carmion, that one, deserved to win because she's amazing. But it was the technology. And I'm like, what the heck? How am I supposed to know how to work TikTok? And but now I do. But my whole point of doing that goes back to it ignited my fire and passion for design and putting myself back where I started and stripping away all the BS and all the awards and all the fanciness. I remembered why I did choose my profession. And we talked about that earlier when I said, you have to kind of strip everything away and remember why you chose to do what you're doing. And I remember standing there in the finale going, and that was part of my little talk is that this ignited my fire. And now I remember why I became a designer. And since that show, I have been a better designer, more in touch, more creative. That whole fire, I mean, I think every now and then, you know, like I said, you've got to put yourself out there, shake it up, and not be afraid. I mean, you know, we get guarded, and that totally stripped away everything. And it really brought me back to where I started, and I loved it. So I've been like on fire since I got back with creativity. So it was the best and the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my whole life.
It sounds like a really fun summer camp
Yes.
in a way, where you're only like I guess what band camp is like
Yeah.
for an American Pie,
Yeah, it was,
in the sense that you're only around other bandmates and that, and you guys are all kind of competing against not really each other, but yourselves, really, in that sense, showing your best versions.
they always asked in our little interviews, they were like, Chris, who's your biggest competition? And I'd always say myself, because the reality is I was competing against myself. And it was harder for me because I don't do the same thing twice. So every room I did was a different style and a different look, you know, with a challenge. And I don't do trends. So that was a little hard. So my room, it was all about the layering and the details, which is hard to tell a story of a lifetime of collecting in a day and a half. But somehow in a Wayfair warehouse, because we had one warehouse we had to pull from for everyone. And, you know, they would refurnish and rechange, which was great. So you would have to go in there and pull and design your rooms. And I mean, it was amazing, but creatively, yeah, something like that.
Creatively,
yeah, however that word.
yeah.
It really pushed me, because I remember being 20 years old and starting out. You don't have much to work with except your brain. And when I started, there was no internet. We couldn't Google anything. You either had to build it, design it, make it, or figure it out. So it really was probably the best, smartest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And again, I go back to that whole don't ever say no to anything that pushes you, because we're all scared to get out of our comfort zone. And I was worried my peers were going to give me a hard time, or it would affect my business negatively. And they were all like, how did you have the guts to do that? And why would you do that? And I was like, why wouldn't I? You know, because like you were talking about, it's hard once you get successful and in your groove to want to jump outside and try something new. But it ended up benefiting me more than I could ever imagine, because people got to see what I did, and I get the most wonderful messages and from people that watch the show and how they were inspired to use color, to think outside the box, to realize they didn't have to be beige, to layer patterns, to be a little more eclectic, interesting, that their home should tell a story. So the message I wanted got across, and I got more back from it than I think I even gave.
Yeah, well, for all those designers out there that are contemplating TV, what are some of your tips that you would give? Especially since it was so much of you weren't prepared for it, and it is kind of an ambush. Luckily, on my side of things, they give you a script.
Oh, no.
They give you some preparation. You do have rehearsals. I haven't done anything that's reality based. So like everything I do, it's completely different than reality shows in that way. And you're very aware of the camera, because you want to make sure you don't look at it or ruin a shot. Yeah.
And then learning all of that. But here's the deal with TV. I had never done it. You know, I give lectures and talk and do all that, but television is a totally different animal. And so many designers are like, oh, that's my end goal. How did you get on HGTV? You know, which is like every designer's dream is to be on HGTV. And, you know, I'd always thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun? But they found me, which I find so shocking. And again, it was by me starting
in Arkansas.
They hand selected the 7 of us from all over the United States. We didn't do any interviews. We didn't submit. They found us, and they found us because either of our social media followings and what we do. They found me because I had started putting myself out there and winning awards, and they had read about me and started following me and what I do. And my whole point to any designer wanting to do that is you can't try too hard, because it's not authentic. You have to actually put yourself out there, try new things, because they're not looking for what they're seeing on TV. They're looking for what they're not seeing. So someone like myself, who, you know, is a middle-aged guy that does luxury, super high-end design, was something new and fresh. Everybody on our cast, I mean, we had a drag queen. How fun was that? You know, they're looking for something different. And everybody that I see that's trying too hard, I think they're called thirst traps now. People that
He's into TikTok now. He's even got the verbiage.
situation.
Watch out,
But
Urban Dictionary.
I think when you lose sight of being yourself, it becomes really hard because that's not what people are looking for print, for media, for television. And the reason they said they picked me is because the way I am on TV is the way I am in real life. And that's what they saw. And so I always tell designers, be authentic. Don't try and copy what somebody else is doing. Don't think because you already saw it on TV, that's what they're looking for, because they're looking for what they haven't seen. So put yourself out there, be super authentic to who you are as your brand, as what you want the world to see you as, and don't try and be anybody else. And that's what landed all of us on this show. It was even so funny that they didn't plan it, but all of us were even different zodiac signs, which we thought was so cool. We were like, we actually had one of every kind of person there was, and that's what made it fun. And we all became best friends. We still talk every week. It became more like a family and less like a competition. And I think TV, especially reality TV, they try and create drama, but there was none between us. So we all actually became tight, like a family and friends, and we encouraged each other. And that came across in the show, I think. And I think good television, good anything is about being authentic and, telling the truth and just doing the best you can. So,
yeah, telling a great story.
And a lot of people try too hard, and I wasn't looking, I wasn't trying. It just happened. And I think that blows most people's minds. And I'm like, it happened because I'm just me. You just have to do you. Don't try and do somebody else. That's already taken.
Right. And don't be the best kept secret because you put yourself out there.
No, and it's hard. All of us hate to brag, and we hate to, because it sounds gross. But you have to find creative ways to put your success out there. And, luckily now through social media, it's so much easier because that's where they find most people now, is through social media. But when you're doing those things, don't try and do what somebody else is doing. They're looking for somebody doing something totally different. And that's what I keep telling people, because everybody wants to be on TV, and it's all not as glamorous as it seems. A lot of it, as you know, is a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of hours, and it's way more work.
A lot of hurry up and wait.
A lot of hurry up and wait. And, and then it's produced. It's not what you think it is. Television for me wasn't, I love it. I look forward to doing more of it. But it was a huge, what you see and what actually happens are two different things. So it was fascinating to actually learn and see how things are done. The process is what I loved.
So speaking of the process, because for those of us who've only seen HGTV from this side as a viewer, I've modeled a couple of things on their show. I guess that counts. And what do you think, as far as because I know that with working with Design Stars, a lot of times some of those Design Stars end up having their own show later on. So I'm curious for you, what kind of show do you, because you notice white space. So what kind of show do you think is missing, or what would you like to host? Or
well, hopefully, I can't say what's happening because the world of television.
No, and I don't don't tell me anything. They'll get you in trouble or prevent the job from happening, because I'll edit it out and you can tell me off air. Just kidding. I don't want to be pulled into the NDA.
I was pitching. Hopefully will happen. It's called Oh My Goddard, and my last name is Goddard. OMG.
Wait! You cannot plan this.
Oh yes. Better.
This is from my BuzzFeed days.
Oh yeah, I like that. That's but my whole point is, I wanted to kind of do for design what Anthony Bourdain did for food, and that is travel the country and travel the world and shine a light on all the artisans and creatives that make designers like myself look good, because one person doesn't create the whole project. There are woodworkers and metalworkers and cabinet. So I wanted to find the best and the brightest and go in and talk to them and show how, when you design something, how the creation starts, the whole process, and then the finale of how it gets installed. So that all those artisans have their little 15 minutes, because I think everybody deserves the spotlight. And it takes, as you know, a village to make one person look great or one project look great. I mean, just to produce a show, as you know, it takes so many people. And to design a home or a building requires an army. And sometimes just one person gets credit, and I'm big on everybody getting credit and sharing. I used to get in trouble on the show a lot because I always said we, because I speak in we, because it is a we. It's not just for me. And they're like, no, Chris, this is a you. And I'm like, no, it's a we. And they're like, no, it's a you. And it was but it's hard because I'm a we person.
Yeah, like that's my pronoun. Okay.
I'm a we.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes a village. And, I really want to be able to shine a light on all these amazing, talented little artists and painters and creatives all over the world. So that's the goal. So we'll see what's going to happen. I can't tell you, but good things are brewing. So we'll see.
Well, you were saying that, I was already like, there's a lot of different companies I've been following, especially with working with this the Kaleidoscope Project, and there's different sponsors that they had, and so I started following all these different brands and so on, and some I had never heard of, and I won't, there's no freebies over here, but one of the brands, they show making their wallpaper, and I'm like obsessed. Like, who would think watching paint dry would be so much fun? But it is, like, just seeing how they hand paint the wallpaper. Like, yeah.
And so many of us see images on Instagram or social media of these beautiful rooms, and we're like, oh, we want that, but we don't understand all that goes into that, and all the layers and all the people that it takes to create one beautiful shot. Or this from filming, that it takes a lot of people to make one thing look really good. And I think those people, once you know more about, the more you know, the better you do, or the better you design, or the better you live. So I'm looking at it more from an education point, as I want people to learn all those parts so they appreciate their environment even more. And that, wow, it took somebody to hand make this, or all the different steps and the different processes that go into creating something, because then you enjoy it more because you know more about it.
It creates that client experience where they're more invested at the same time.
Yes,
like, I know the person who painted my wallpaper, or whoever, reupholstered my sofa, or
conversation stories. Beautiful spaces start conversations. So I'm always, when I design a space with a client, I'm like, let's pick something that's really important to you that's going to tell the story. And when guests or people or family come over, it's kind of an icebreaker. They're like, how did you see this? This came from here. And then it opens a conversation. Like all things, design and spaces should start a conversation. And it's hard to start a conversation in a boring beige room. So I'm always like, it's like that beautiful painting you have behind you that starts a conversation. I was like, oh, who did that? And that's a good icebreaker. And it's great for people because everybody wants to talk a little bit about themselves, or a little bit about family, or somewhere they went, or something that's important to them, and then somebody can share. So that's what good design really is.
No, I agree 100%. Well, tell everyone how they can keep up with you, or any future plans that you can share that we can go ahead and start supporting as well.
Well, you're going to get to hear me with beautiful Camille, and you can follow me on all the major social medias. I'm at Goddard Design Group on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. So please follow along. We have lots of big announcements coming the next couple of months, and lots of fun things and stories to share. So, and we're also launching a new website in a few weeks, which is amazing. So lots of great things happening here. So Goddard Design Group, make sure you follow along.
Done and done. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being my guest. This has been such a great interview, and I love chatting with you today.
We'll do it again, and we'll do it on time next time. I promise we'll figure out see, again, my downfall, technology. It's
all good. And on that same point, like, I had it when the pandemic hit, I was working on radio. So I had to change my show to be able to do it from home, because I have a daughter and virtual academy and all that wonderful fun stuff. So I had to learn. You were speaking to the choir. There's so many times I'm like, in the beginning, because I did 100 interviews within like 5 months or so, because I was doing them every day. Like, I couldn't say no. Like, as soon as somebody would say, I'm like, yeah, how about Monday? How about Tuesday? And it just, I couldn't believe that people were so eager to do it, and I was like, I don't want them to change their mind, or maybe tomorrow everything will open back up. Because it started because one of the publicists that had placed on Entertainment Tonight, or had her client placed on Entertainment Tonight, she reached out to me about they're shutting down all in studio, not Entertainment Tonight, the one with Mario. Extra. Extra. Sorry. And she was telling me how they were closing all in studio, and asked me if I knew any podcasts. And I was like, give me about a week. And it took me a week to learn everything I needed to do to be able to start my own show. And I can't stop. Like, I just love it so much. So
Really fun to talk to. And I'm impressed you're running all that. It's hard. The technology part is difficult.
it is, especially when I grew up around like AOL
Right.
was, you know, you just had chat rooms was like the most exciting thing.
Exactly.
And then MySpace, oh God, I date myself, was the second thing. And so I'm like, I almost had my coding degree with MySpace when they canceled it. So I was like, I'm not investing in another thing. And
Right.
with modeling and acting, they kind of, up until recently, they never wanted you to take pictures on set and all of that stuff. So I never did. And so when everybody started posting things on social media, I'm like, you're never going to work again. You're, you know, being that person, and then realize, wait, I'm not working. So that's what made me start getting into social media more. And I hated it at first because I didn't, like you said, it's hard to brag about yourself.
Yeah.
It is. And you don't want to come off as braggadocious, but at the same time, like, how else will people know what you're doing if you don't post it out there? So
there's a
thanks for that
line
reminder
there, and that's kind of the tightrope we all walk, because you don't want to be
Yeah.
too thirsty, but you want people to know, hey, this is happening, this is happening. You know, shameless
Yeah.
self-promotion is fun. It's just the way you do it. Now, do you do TikTok?
Okay, so I have it. I use it for editing more than I use it to actually post, because I feel like it's so intimidating and there's not much time, and I'm like, 15 seconds. But now they keep increasing times. I'm like, oh, okay, I have no excuse anymore.
So scary.
But I spend more time scrolling
Yeah.
because everybody's so funny, and I don't drink, and so a lot of the TikToks are, you know, drunken moms or drunken this, and I'm like, I don't want to keep looking at people. If your life's that hard, you should change it. Like, it shouldn't take a bottle of wine to do your job or to be a parent, or that's more on you than the kid.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, this isn't giving me the kind of energy that I want. So I took a break from it, and now it's so funny again. So I'm having fun in the dances and all of that.
But can you imagine being on television and them hand you a phone and say, make a TikTok,
No.
and you have 30 minutes? Yeah, I didn't even know how to do the editing. I didn't know how to do any of it. So I was trying to teach myself. Horrifying. That was.
I go to webinars to learn this stuff because my teenager doesn't help me.
No, they just gave me a phone. They're like, "Good luck," and I was like,
"Yeah." Okay, one last question, because I was like, wait, 5 weeks without a phone? Like, completely? Like, you couldn't, no phone, no nothing?
At night, we got our phones back. And then, you know, we all had businesses to run. And on normal reality shows, you don't get your phone the whole time. But because they brought on all established designers, which was new, everybody already had a career. And we all had to do our, you know, our real jobs at night. So we would film until union stop at 7. So then we would do our end of day, and then we would all run back to our rooms and run our businesses for a couple hours and crash. But at night we had our phones, but we weren't allowed to, you know, talk to anybody other than our offices. They really, you know, the NDAs are real, and you're not allowed to talk about much of anything. So.
No, I understand. There's nothing worse than a spoiler alert. I'm right there. Like, there's all these different spoiler alerts that are coming out for movies that haven't even made it to the box office. I'm like, well,
I don't want to.
Don't ruin it for people. But yeah,
it was fun dancing for 5 weeks. So everybody's like, where? So that was fun. Then they were like, oh my God, you're on TV. And it's like, yeah, that was fun.
So anytime you disappear now, they're going to expect great things on TV from you. So we all have to keep an eye. Next time he goes to the next time he goes to rehab, just know he's going to be on TV. You always have a great cover.
Right. All right, Camille,
all right. Well, again, thank you so much.
Right.
This has been great, and you have a wonderful rest of your week.
You enjoy and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.